Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Sanctuary. We are back. I have got a fantastic show lined up for you today. It is Devy Week, and I couldn't think of a better guest to have on to kick off Devy Week. I'm joined by the one, the only Jordan Merritt. He is part of the 5-Yard Rush team. You may know him as the brand new host of the Devy Workshop over on YouTube. Jordan, how are you doing?
I'm really good, Rich. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it and all the kind words there. Yeah, looking forward to the episode and yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I'm a big fan. Obviously, Jordan and I worked together back in the 5-Yard Rush days, and yeah, big fan of the work there. If you aren't following him, go and check him out on Twitter. He's at JordM87. And as I said, he's literally just kicked off the Devy Workshop on YouTube. And I've seen the first episode. It's fantastic. And yeah, really excited to see what's coming from there over the coming weeks and months. So make sure you're giving that a subscribe. Today, we are going to talk through, I guess, the 2024 rookie class. We're going to talk through some big names. There's a lot of talk about what are their values, what are the values of the elite draft picks. Is it just a case of next year's class is always better? So we're going to do some Devy content. Before we dive in, Jordan, I've got a big question for you. What is Devy? Because if you don't know and you are watching us right now, you're thinking, I'm here for Dynasty. I know what redraft is, but what on earth is Devy, Jordan?
I've been thinking, I always seem to like overcomplicate it at times when I first started playing Devy to try to explain it, but I think the best way to explain it that makes it like simple is it's basically Dynasty. So you've got your Dynasty side, but you've got a Devy draft, which is on top of your first, obviously picking all your NFL players, but get that team. You do your Devy draft, which is picking college players that haven't actually got to the NFL yet. So the Devy drafts can be whatever you want them to be. There can be 4 drafts. I've been in ones that are 10 round drafts, so you can have as many as you want. You pick your college players, and then when they do enter the NFL draft, if they get picked up, they will automatically go to your NFL Dynasty team. And obviously, just to throw in the mix as well, there's a 3rd draft after year 1, which is depleted rookie draft. So the rookies that didn't make it, like if you was in a few this year, like people like Jaden Reed is a popular name who was on depleted, who didn't get picked up on the Devy drafts that go into the depleted rookie draft. So every year there's actually 3 drafts. So if you love drafting, Devy's a perfect place for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's perfect, isn't it? It's basically Dynasty, but you're drafting rookies whilst they're still in college rather than waiting for them to declare. So it just brings a new element to it. It gets people involved in the more college side. You're starting to have to go out and actually scout. I think there's not as much content around these guys, you know, a year, 2 years before they're coming out. I mean, for me, I'm very much gets to February and I dive fully into the rookie class. So it's playing Devy has certainly got me thinking ahead and looking ahead and trying to scout these guys while they're still freshmen and sophomores and that kind of thing. But today, what we're going to do, I'm calling it the Big 5. There are 5 names that I am hearing, and I've seen some tape of all of them that are going to be superstars at the NFL level. I think there's a lot of talk about the 23 class and how great it was, and then it kind of slightly disappointed. I think the 2024 class, it looks like it's lacking depth. It looks like it's not going to have those great kind of early second-round picks, but it's going to have a superstar potentially at each position. So let's start at the top. Let's start at the glamour position. You've probably heard his name mentioned. You've probably heard NFL guys start talking about him. Caleb Williams, quarterback out of USC, obviously a transfer over from Oklahoma, came with Lincoln Riley. Is he as good, Jordan, as the hype suggests?
People might say that I am biased, obviously, as a Pac-12 guy and stuff, but I really think so. It's really hard to not be excited. It's one of them. I think you mentioned the 2023 class. You know, like you're probably more reluctant to like get so hyped into the players coming out of 2024. But it's really hard not to with Caleb Williams. If you've watched any of his film, he's just such an exciting player. And you know, the amount of times I've watched college football with him, and the people have like compared him to Mahomes because of his scrambling ability, you know, to get out of really bad positions, especially with. You've got to remember that he had a really bad O-line last year, so he was put in bad positions, you know, and the things that he can do with the ball in hand and with his feet have really propelled him up to the top, and rightfully so, I'd say.
So yeah, I mean, I've not kind of dive in fully yet. I've watched 2 games of his, and that's enough for me to buy the hype and fully believe, because I think the Mahomes comp is quite frankly ridiculous. I think comparing anyone to Mahomes is ridiculous because Mahomes is a one of one, but I see a lot of the traits. He's got prototypical size, the arm strength completely jumps off the page. His ability outside of pocket is fantastic, but the difference for me is that I think people got excited about Zach Wilson and what he could do outside of the pocket, but actually couldn't do it inside the pocket. Whereas I see that Caleb Williams has got that processing ability, the ability to go 1 to 2 to 3. So I think that comparing him to this year's class, I appreciate I've not watched as much of him as I have of the others, but it's basically Bryce Young but with prototypical size, and I think that that's how exciting. I was a big Bryce Young believer, still am, and I think he's going to be fantastic at the NFL level. But the size is a concern. Well, you're telling me I can basically have that in a body that is ideal, and it's like, okay, I'm fully all in, because I think he's, we throw around this generational prospect, and it's basically seems to be what it means is every 5 to 10 years. And we had Trevor Lawrence, we had Andrew Luck, we've had John Elway and people like that. And I think that Caleb Williams is absolutely going to be thrown in that bucket. And I think he's a better prospect than Trevor Lawrence coming out, which, might shock a few people because I was super high on Trevor Lawrence. But I think he is absolutely the real deal.
I think he had a better, if I remember right, I think he had a better freshman quarterback rating than Trevor Lawrence. And since then, obviously going back whatever years that was, a freshman Trevor Lawrence, there's no one that had a better quarterback rating as a freshman since him, and he's better than Trevor Lawrence. I know you've still got a few years in college as well on top of that, but I think, like you said there, you've watched 2 games and that's enough, and that is Caleb Williams. The amount of games that he's had to put on his back, because the USC defense wasn't great last year. They gave up a lot of points, and there was amount of times that Caleb Williams had to really, I know he had Jordan Addison there with him as well, but the amount of times that he had to put the team on his shoulders and put them in winning positions, and that's a massive, going into the NFL. If you can do that, we saw that with Bryce Young last year as well. We had not the best receiver room, but like I said, what he can do outside the pocket. And there's a lot of things that he can get better at, but because he's so good at throwing the ball and using his feet, he gets away with some of the fit areas that he needs to work on, which is another kind of a tick, really, especially if he can, throwing off the back foot, throwing backwards, his arms aren't that good that he can get away with it.
Yeah, it's that. Again, I hate coming back to it, but it's that Mahomes-esque where Mahomes can drift 15 yards back in the pocket and still put the ball on time. Caleb Williams' arm's that good where he can do a similar thing. But enough about Caleb Williams. Let's talk about the other quarterback that seems to get thrown in. It's very much a 1-2 next year. Drake Maye. Do you believe that it's a one-year wonder? Do you think he's going to fall back to earth next year, which I've seen some people suggest, or do you think that he is, again, the real deal that could be a cornerstone for your dynasty franchise to come?
Yeah, I think I'm one of them people that's probably easily just sits on the fence, because you could predict both ways. Like you said, some people are going to predict he's going to be in a similar, I'm not comparing him to Sam Howell, but he's going to be in a similar position with Sam Howell where he's losing a lot of his receiving threats that he's put up a partnership with last year. Josh Downs has gone. Second best receiver he had was Green. He's left, so he's got some new targets there. But if I had to lean, I'd probably say no. I think this guy is talented. What he did in his first year, what he can do in the pocket is a bit different to Caleb Williams. On the run, he's probably lacks that quality with the passing on the move, but in the pocket, even I think he put up something like top 800 yards, 870, something like that, and that was like the 3rd highest rushing quarterback in college, which is something that you wouldn't think about with Drake Maye. You think, Caleb Williams and everyone else would be that guys, but fantasy wise, he's got really capabilities to be a really good guy at the next level. And I like I said to you, I probably wouldn't lean to him being a one-hit wonder. I think we'll see what he can do again next year. But again, another one who's really good, and he's still got areas to work on, which is not a bad thing as well when you're that talented.
Yeah, I think he's an interesting one. I think there's definitely some areas that he needs to round out. I'm not fully convinced on his processing ability. I think that there's sometimes he locks on to one target. And I mean, when you got Josh Downs, I can kind of understand it slightly, but there is times when he doesn't go 1 to 2 to 3 like you see Caleb Williams doing. But But I think that rushing side is really interesting. I don't think he's going to come in and be a Lamar, a Kyler, Justin Fields, someone like that. But I think there's definitely an element of, could he be, Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Tannehill, Jacoby Brissett level rusher that isn't going to get you, 1,000 yards rushing, but is going to get you 300-400 yards rushing, but is going to be a real threat in and around the goal line, because you saw last year he had 7 rushing touchdowns, and I think that's an area where he can add something. It's definitely an intriguing prospect. I think probably riskier than Caleb Williams. I think for me, I'd be gobsmacked if Caleb Williams this year, coming out next year, isn't a top 2 pick. Whereas I could absolutely see a world where Drake Maye, as you said, it's a new receiving core. It's a lot of different talent, and I worry that he could struggle this year and fall down draft boards and not to the Sam Howell level of disappearing into the 5th rounds. But I think there could be a time where Drake Maye is suddenly a middle of the 1st round prospect rather than that true bona fide top 2 pick.
Yeah, I'm definitely not comparing the two, Sam Howell and Drake Maye, but there is obviously going into obviously coming off the year that Sam Howell had, going into that year before he went to the draft. There is similarities there. Like even the rushing yards, that Sam Howell didn't have many rushing yards, and then that year he had loads, and the yards after contact was big, and the Drake Mays were the same. I think he had 500 of his 800 plus yards were after contact. So a lot of them were design runs, and one thing that you mentioned there, which was a good point. His first read, and after that he does struggle going forward. But that's the North Carolina offense, and that's what people was wary of with Sam Howell, where the first read a lot of the time was always there. So, and that's how UNC played, and so what is he going to be like on the 2nd, 3rd read? And that's somewhere he struggled, and he's going to need that 2nd and 3rd read at the next level. And that, let's hope he can dust that up this year.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to be very interesting. He's the player I'm probably most excited to watch this year, because the talent is there, the elite opportunity, the elite talent, the elite potential is there, but there is absolutely some risk, and I think he's still got quite a lot more to prove, whereas I think the rest of the guys that we're going to talk about today have got less to prove and are kind of more proven, if that makes sense. So we're going to dive across now to, I'm going to lay it on the table, okay? Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best wide receiver prospect I have ever watched film on. And that's going back to 2013, I think, was the first year I watched tape on college prospects. He can do it all. I'm just absolutely blown away. The guy is incredible. I mean, are you as much of a believer as I am?
Yeah, there's not really much. Well, there's nothing I can say that's a knock on him. You mentioned there your highest rated receiver, since the year that you mentioned. I can't remember what you just said, but I know you shouldn't go on what coaches say, but obviously the wide receiver coach at OSU, Brian Hartline, said that this guy was the best wide receiver he's coached in the last 4 to 5 years. And where I would love to know where you've got obviously Wilson, Olave, and JSN on your rankings, because them 3 was on the team as well. And if this guy's better than them 3, then we're going to be in for a treat, aren't we, when he comes into the NFL?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, I've not, as I said, I've watched 2 games of all these prospects. I've not done the full deep dive. I've not gone into the model and all that kind of stuff. I'm speaking purely in terms of film grade, what I've given him. He's the best prospect. I've got no questions. I think he's prototypical size. I think he's an elite route runner. I think he's great at the catch. His hands, he's not one of these that's, got questionable hand placement. I think that's perfect. He's firm at the ball, but got soft hands. And I just think he's, built in a lab. So I'm so excited. And it's mad where we're talking about potentially having 2 franchise quarterbacks. But if you were sitting here or in a Devy draft or looking at next year in rookie drafts, I wouldn't be gobsmacked if Marvin Harrison is the 101 in all formats, because I think he is that good. We're talking, I gave him a better film grade than I gave Jamar Chase, and I thought Jamar Chase was an absolute superstar waiting to happen. So yeah, it's I'm really, really excited. Have you got? I know we've seen some good kind of pedigreed wide receivers come out of OSU the last few years. You know, you mentioned Wilson, Olave, JSN. Going back before that, you've obviously got, I want to say, McLaurin and Michael Thomas as well. Are you concerned that we're just buying into almost the helmet scouting and saying, right, this is the next in the long line of Ohio State wide receivers that's going to be great, but actually there could be some level of disappointment there?
I think it's obviously easy to do that, like you say, helmet scouting. It's easy to fall into, but I think if, like you say, if you just put on the tape, you know that it's not helmet scouting when the talented cornerbacks he's come up at him, and everything that they've tried to do to stop him is just he's just managed to like still put up great games. You know, like man coverage. You know, like they've tried to press him at the line. He can just beat everyone in any way, and like I say, he's come up against some good corners. You know, I know he ended up getting drafted a bit late, but he came up against Keely Ringo in Georgia, came up against Penn State last season, Porter Jr. You know, Porter Jr. Was drafted early in the second round. You know, I know that you could probably think, oh, there's going to be better cornerbacks at the next level, but everything that's been put in front of him, he's managed to just distinguish and put up big yard games. And it's not someone who's going to. He's not a fast guy. He's not going to run a fast 40, but it doesn't matter because he just gets open, you know, with his physicality and, like you say, and that burst off the line.
Yeah, I mean, his release package is fantastic. His release package is NFL ready, which is something that, you know, that's the thing that normally takes rookie receivers time. And I think that he could walk into the NFL and be able to beat press coverage straight away. So yeah, I'm all in. I think I've said that already on this show about Devy Prospects. So let's keep going in. I'm diving more. You know, I'm throwing all my chips in that 2024 basket.
I think just before you move on real quick, and just in the Devy startups, Caleb Williams always goes 101. Marvin Harrison always goes 102. And everyone that I've done this year, Drake Maye 103 sometimes, well, it'll be 104, but them two are always 101, 102. I think that says a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're going to go across to the running back position. I think it's interesting because if we'd have done this a year ago, talking about the 2024 prospects, I think there's another player that plays for Ohio State that we'd probably been talking about, but he didn't have the best year. We're talking about Travion Henderson. He didn't have the best year. He's fallen down ranks a little bit. But the running back we're going to talk about, Raheim Sanders out of Arkansas. He is a big guy. We're talking 6'2", 220 pounds. Impressive, physical, downhill runner. I'd like to see a little bit more in the receiving game. I think he's competent. I don't think he's great, but there's a hell of a lot to love about him. Are you a Sanders believer?
Yeah, he's my number one coming out for this year. Running back, he's, like you say, Travion Henderson had a bit of a down year, and obviously with injuries and things. But yeah, Raheim Sanders, like you say, he's a big guy. He's going to be. You mentioned obviously he has had a bit of reception, but you want to see more. But he's going to be that workhorse guy for me. You know, he can really put it together. Like I probably say he is more of a north-south runner. You know, like he just runs. He has got a few cuts in him, but you're not going to see him get to the outside as much and stuff. And he's probably not going to. He can pull off big plays. You know, like big chunk plays. But again, that is. He wouldn't, as a fantasy thing, you might say differently, Rich. You played Dynasty a lot longer than me, but if someone can pull off like a 40-yard game, that's brilliant. Obviously, depending on what kind of plays you know games you're playing, you know, with the bonuses. But this guy's going to just chip away constantly because of the workhorse. You know, he always positive yards, and he's still got a lot of things that he can work on as well. You know, sometimes I feel he's a bit too patient behind the line. You know, like and probably likes contact a bit too much at times. But for me, fantasy wise, he's just going to. If he gets on a team, he likes to run the ball. He's just going to get you points constantly each week.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really great point you made there in that, you know, you look at him compared to someone like Saquon Barkley. If Saquon Barkley is going to have a 100-yard rushing game, it's going to come on 3 yards, 2 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards, 60 yards. Like he's a home run threat. Whereas Sanders is going to be 7 yards, 7 yards, 7 yards, you know, 6 yards, 5 yards. Like he consistently gets 2, 3, 4 yards more than is blocked for him, which is an incredible attribute. But he's not going to constantly break one. But I think that's a good thing because he doesn't rely on that home run to produce fantasy points. As I said, I've got a niggle around the receiving game. He was okay. I think he was more of a, there's sort of, I say there's the three buckets. There's the players that can't be receiving backs. There's the guys that feast on forced receptions of checkdowns and screens, and then there's the receiving backs. And I think that he's probably in that middle bucket. I'd like to see him utilised in space a little bit more and actually get to run some routes rather than just be a kind of a checkdown Charlie. But yeah, I think there's a lot to like. In terms of values, I've got him valued around sort of Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, Cam Akers right now. So if you were offering me in a Devy league those guys or Raheim Sanders, that's about where I'd value him. For people who are still got their rookie brains on, I'd take Raheim Sanders over Zach Charbonnet. I'd take him over Devin Achane. He'd be a knock below Jamal Gibbs right now, but that's because Jamal Gibbs is entering the league. In a year's time, I may well have Sanders over Gibbs.
Yeah, definitely. Like it really, like you just mentioned, if he can really put that receiving game, it's hard in it with college because he's shown he can pick up a bit of receiving work. But if you've got like a team like Arkansas like to pull out this other running back as well, they like to. It's nothing. It might not even be a knock on Raheim Sanders. Like receiving ability, but you just like to rotate it around. It can be a hard eval as well at the same time. But yeah, it would be great to see a bit more of that this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm a Georgia guy. You came here. We're talking about Brock Bowers. How good is Brock Bowers? And yes, there is a wrong answer here, Jordan. If you answer it wrong, you get kicked off the show.
Best tread carefully. When I come on, I just put a little bit of notes here just to keep me in the right direction, and I just give him the ball. Just get the ball in his hand whichever way you can, because he'll make plays for you. If that's end around, like sweeps, just coming out of the slot, just like working them, them weak spots, just get him the ball and he'll get you yards after catch and get you touchdowns. And there's a question I've got for you later, to ask you, because I know how much you like, the stats and obviously the weight issues and all this stuff. But there's one thing this year, obviously, OC Todd Monken is on his way to the Ravens. They've promoted Mike Bobo in there. I still think he's from inside. I still think they'll run the same kind of offense anyway because he was there. But I don't think there'll be any change in how they use him. But it's just maybe something just to keep an eye on. But I don't know if he's probably done enough already in what he's shown already. But yeah, maybe something to keep an eye on.
I think Brock Bowers could basically not play again for a whole year. He could opt out and he'd still be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. I think he is a complete freak. I think his athleticism just jumps off the page. I think he is a nuanced route runner. He's got fantastic hip flexibility, which is a ridiculous thing to talk about for a tight end, but I think it enables him to manipulate defenders and create separation. And I think that he's going to be a superstar. If you were to say to me, put your hat, who do you think is going to be the most fantasy relevant player? Yeah, I'd probably go Marvin Harrison 1, but I'd go Brock Bowers over Caleb Williams. And I think that those three guys, Brock Bowers, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, we've talked about all three of them. I think they're going to be fantasy superstars for years to come. I'm so excited. It's a tight end. I get that it's a bit weird, but I think right now, Brock Bowers is my tight end 4. I would have Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, Kyle Pitts, and then I'd take Brock Bowers in a Devy league over any other tight end in the NFL. And that's given the fact that he's not going to score you a point for a year. That's how excited I am about him. So yeah, I think that he's incredible. I've got literally no question marks about him coming to the next level.
And obviously, I said it at the top. I've got a question for you. Like, I know you're an analytics guy, which is something I should really get more into instead of being a video thing, because it probably will help fantasy-wise. But I'm going to nick this question from another Devy podcast I listen to, and a guy asked the other hosts, is at 6'4" at the moment, Brock Bowers. What happens? Because obviously, you know that when people measure, sometimes they're shown a bit higher on 247 spots. Would there be no concern at all for you if he came in at 6'3"? Because obviously, 6'3" tight ends, not many of them has been productive. So would that still not be a knock on for you, going forward?
No, not at all. I mean, I am a big proponent of size doesn't matter across all fantasy relevant positions. I'm the guy here that's saying Tank Dale's a screaming value because people are dropping him because of his size, and actually he's a really good route runner. He's going to get used. So I believe that he is enough of a talent that if he comes in at 6'3", it's like, okay, fine. He's probably not going to be a, traditional inline wide tight end. Okay, great. That means he's going to be an F. He's going to get used in space, and he's basically going to be a slot receiver, Yeah, I'd like him to be 6'5", 250, wouldn't we all? But if he comes in at 6'3", 230, I still think that he's a good enough athlete and a mismatch that's going to be used in a, he's not going to be Mike Gesicki, who can only play out of the slot, but I think he could be Mark Andrews. And if you've got a guy that is this dynamic in the passing game, do you really want him lining up in line to block, or do you want to flex him out wide and use him as that kind of big slot receiver? So yeah, yes, I'd be lying if I sat here and said I wouldn't love it if he was 6'5", 250, but I'm not overly concerned about that height or the size question.
That's fair. It's like you mentioned there, how dynamic he is now. His athleticism that he's got. If he goes to a team, you just want to get him the ball, however that is. Like you said, if you're playing him out of the slot, you just need to get him the ball because he will make plays.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've gone through the big five. Is there anyone else, George, that we should be keeping an eye out on? Any other prospects that you think have got the potential to creep up into the top end of first round rookie picks next year?
I think you've put me on the spot here, Rich. I think there's one guy that I mentioned. I don't know if he'll creep in to the first. He had a really good year last year, but I know you're not. You mentioned the height. I know you're not. I don't know how you feel about the age. I know you kind of. I don't know how you were with Kenny Pickett at the start, but I know you've kind of come around to him a bit more, going into year two. But there's Jordan Travis at Florida State. He's got a lot of weapons around him this year. Florida State are going to be a very good team this year. There's some good wide receivers there that won't come out for another couple of years. Well, there is one actually. It was an absolute giant. It should be a tight end. But Jordan Travis is probably going to be. I think he's 24 when he'll enter the draft, but he's got that rushing ability. Really good rusher. He's really fun to watch. He's probably. I know there's some good rushers in college, but he's probably one of the best rushers in college at quarterback. How he does it. Sometimes looks like a running back. How he runs. Got really better as a thrower this last year. So if he can propel his stock again, I can see him definitely sneaking into the first. I don't know if he'll catch up to these five, in the middle of the first, but I can see him sneaking into the first round definitely, in rookie drafts.
Oh, fantastic! Well, he's not a name that I've watched, so I've written him down. I'm going to go and dig out some tape if I can find it, because that's my biggest challenge with Devy is trying to find these guys' film and so that I can watch it, because it's not as easy to get as the NFL. But George, thank you ever so much for coming on. For those of you, before you go, make sure you hit the like, make sure you're giving us a subscribe. George, remind the guys, where can they find you? Where can they find your work?
So on Twitter, my own personal one is JordM87. I'll drop, obviously, work, like I say, 5 Yard Rush, part of the 5 Yard College team there, so I'll do some writing there. I've got a few things that are coming out in the next month or so. They're already written up, and then obviously the Devy Workshop that's just kicked off on YouTube. 2 episodes dropped there today, so it'd be a massive help if you could subscribe and like and follow the Twitter thing, and be very much appreciated as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on, George. It's been a pleasure. A great mind in the Devy community. If you're looking to get into, whether it's just scouting that 2024 class or whether you are wanting to play Devy football, make sure you're giving Jordan a follow. Make sure you give him that like and subscribe over on YouTube, because there is some great content coming your way. We'll be back later within the week. As I said, it's Devy week. We've got another Devy show with an incredible guest lined up. We're doing something a little bit different, so I hope you're excited. And of course, Tom's got some more best ball content. He's got some live drafts. He has got some incredible guests, and I mean incredible, lined up over the next few weeks. So make sure you're giving us that subscribe, and we'll be back very soon.